The following is a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
Drivers, start your engines. Pull those belts down tight one more time, warm up those tires, hit your marks, and let's go racing, boys and girls. Nascar, Indycar, Formula One, Formula E, and NHRA Racing Talk. This is the Championship Racing Network. Now here is your hosts, Steve West and Matt Nicholson, with producer John Myers.
Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, as the old Meatloaf saying goes. Usually that means that we're without producer John, but in this point in time, we are without coach Matt Nicholson. We'll explain that coming up in a minute. Steve West and producer John in studio, and while no racing last weekend, plenty to talk about. We'll have Matt for the first couple of segments by phone. But we got you for the next 2 hours. We'll fill you in on a busy week in the racing world. It's quite NASCAR heavy, I'll let you know that. But we also have news from the world of IndyCar, Formula One, Formula E, and the NHRA. So we got a whole lot to cover here over the next couple of hours. So now's your chance. Kind of your last chance, if you really want to be honest. Grab that biscuit or whatever it is that you're going to have for breakfast. Maybe you like waffles or pancakes. I'm not judging. And maybe coffee or whatever drink you prefer, and sit back because CRN is next.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network. Four tires and 2 cans of fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome into the show. Again, Steve West, producer John in studio this week. Matt is going to join us here by phone. As a matter of fact, I guess you're about to put him in. Good morning, Matt. How are you, man?
I'm good. I'm here.
You already at the field?
Yeah, we're getting ready to start training a little plastic, do a little hitting football season.
Yeah, I was about to say, let's go ahead and explain exactly what you're doing because we now get to add Coach Matt Nicholson to your resume, don't we?
Yeah, I guess you can put that in the repertoire of the resume. Doing a little bit of rec league coaching for the sophomore age group, ages 5, 6, and 7 years old. So it's a handful and a half, but it's fun.
That's cool. Very good stuff. First game this morning. You'll start right about the time we start hour number 2, if I remember right.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to get into a couple of things here real quick, and let's put none too fine a point on it. We always kick off with racing recap, but there wasn't any racing last weekend among the series we cover, so there ain't no recap. But this weekend we got some racing. It'll start this evening as we air live. Craftsman Truck Series is going to be getting into the action. They're going to be at Richmond Raceway at the Clean Harbors 250. It'll air on Fox Sports 1 and MRN Radio. Starts 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Central Time. Let's give you kind of the rundown here. Truck Series race will indeed set the playoff roster. This is the final race of their regular season. These are the players that we know that are in via wins. Christian Eckes, Corey Heim, Nick Sanchez, Ty Majeski, Rajah Caruth. In on points as long as they attempt to qualify later today. Tyler Ankrum will be in. Grant Enfinger will be in because they're 83 and 77 points above the cut line. That means that they cannot be pointed out. So here's the deal. Only 3 positions are up for grabs. Taylor Gray's in a pretty good spot. Mathematically, he could still be eliminated, but 48 points above the cut line. He's going to have a really horrible day, and a couple of other drivers going to have a really good day. Ben Rhodes, who's your defending Truck Series champion, a little less comfortable. He's 22 points over. Then there's Tanner Gray, who's probably feeling a whole lot of heat in that seat, 5 points above the cut line. Daniel Dye is 5 points under the cut line. Stuart Friesen, 16 under. Outside chance to point his way in, 3-time series champion Matt Kraft, and he's 43 points above the cut line. Of course, any driver full-time running for points in the Truck Series, they are in with a win. So we will see what happens tonight and tomorrow. In our limited slate of racing for this weekend, Cup Series taking center stage, running the Cookout 400 at Richmond Raceway as seen on USA, heard on MRN, start at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central Time. Thankfully, they got lights at Richmond. Xfinity Series, Formula 1, IndyCar, NHRA are off. Formula E Series is done. So, yeah, we're slowly working our way back from the Olympic break. And, of course, Formula 1's right in the middle of their August break because Europe takes the entire month of August off. Thanks for celebrating producer John's and my birthday. We appreciate that. Mine was yesterday. John's is coming up on the 15th. Happy birthday in advance, brother.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yours retroactive.
Yeah, as of yesterday.
Absolutely.
All right, let's talk about probably the biggest news of the week here first, Matt, and that is the fact that the longtime head of Toyota Racing Development, David Wilson, is set to retire at the end of this year. Wilson was named president of TRD back in January of 2014, so about a little more than 10 years ago. He's been the centerpiece of Toyota's efforts in the NASCAR and, truth be told, quite hands-on in the NHRA as well. Some significant wins in some pretty big races, Daytona 500, Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona. His replacement is Tyler Gibbs. No relation to Joe Gibbs, just in case you were thinking, oh, wow, yeah, that makes sense. No, that's just pure happenstance, as it turns out. Wilson put in a release from TRD on Wednesday, quote, "I've completed my lap and I'm proud to hand the keys over to my friend and brother in arms, Tyler Gibbs. Gibbs will take over all racing activity for Toyota in North America, which includes engine and chassis engineering, manufacturing, and the administration, all based out of the California offices." Gibbs obviously says he's got big shoes to fill as Wilson's successor. That may be one of the understatements of the year because David Wilson has been so front and center here over the last decade. Tyler Gibbs, he's got some really, really big shoes to fill. But the good thing is that David Wilson looks like he's set up a really, really good infrastructure here and has set up Toyota to be real, real good for the long term. Or do you see something different?
Oh, no, he's got some Toyota set up. I guess the old saying, like it goes lock, stock, and barrel. I mean, they've proven themselves I mean, it's self-explanatory what they've done on the track, not only in NASCAR, but in multiple motorsports overall through Toyota Racing Development. So he's handing Tyler Gibbs a pretty golden set of golden keys.
Yeah.
Toyota, if you ask me.
Yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. And I don't really see anything major changing. I mean, what Joe Gibbs Racing is built over there with plus they're in conjunction, obviously, with 2311 Racing. It is a little bit weird to think that Legacy MC switched to Toyota this year, but decided not to really link up with Joe Gibbs and or 2311. They've tried to stick it out on their own, and unfortunately, they haven't really been able to do a whole lot over there.
And unfortunately, it's showing in the most negative way that it can, because they've really not even been on the map, if you ask me.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be one of those things that we'll keep an eye on, because we got some news on that later on where they're going to be trying to turn their season around. But probably the second biggest bit of news this week, and this was sudden and kind of surprising. Tuesday of this week, Juncos Hollinger Racing announced that they have amicably split with Argentinian driver Agustin Canapino, and that was effective immediately. The timing on the surface seemed pretty odd. We talked about this. We mentioned it, I should say, during Wednesday's podcast of Crossing Flags. If you missed it, again, every Wednesday. But it seemed a bit odd because of how deep we were into the Olympic break. I mean, we were coming towards the end, if you will, of the Olympic break for the series. So why do it at this point in time? Well, let's go back to that controversy that got stirred up on a social media post earlier this year. According to the team, that was the main reason. The third incident stirring up a hornet's nest in a year's time. The team thanks Canapino in their statement. They said quote, both Agustin and the team have worked tirelessly to learn, grow, and succeed throughout his time at JHR, and we're extremely proud of what we have achieved together. But back in June, you might remember Canapino had to sit out the race at Road America after getting into a battle with Aero McLaren driver Teo Pourchaire, where Pourchaire had gotten some death threats online from people claiming to be fans of Canapino, prompted Aero McLaren Racing to end their technical and marketing partnership agreement between the two teams immediately. And they just decided finally that it was too much for them to be able to overcome. I mean, I'm trying to figure out the hurdle here, and I'm not really sure why they would put him back in the car and then a couple of races later, while they've got an Olympic break, they had a chance to sit down and think about it and said, you know what? We could be better off by going and finding another driver who's not as controversial. I'm not sure I quite follow the logic on this particular move. I mean, maybe that's just me.
That's a really good question right there. I mean, but as much controversy as he's caused all year, I'm kind of not surprised.
Yeah. But again, why wait until now? I mean, if you were going to do it, I might have done it, hey, we suspended him for the race at Road America. We're just going to go and replace him right here, make that clean cut then.
Right.
I don't know. Producer John, you seem to have thoughts running through your head.
Could it be they really couldn't find someone in that time frame? Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. I mean, you might be onto something. When we think about it, for Road America, Juncos Hollinger Racing turned to Nolan Siegel. He's no longer an option. He's now at Aero McLaren Racing. Interesting to note that Nolan Siegel took over the seat that Teo Pourchaire had been in when all of this stuff happened. So as it turns out, Teo Pourchaire, strangely enough, is available. I don't know whether they'll go to him or not. JHR has yet to announce who's going to take over the number 78 as the series continues, but I can guarantee you they're going to. They've got sponsorship. I mean, sponsorship's not really the problem for them. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But they've got, this weekend and early next week before they got to get ready to head on down the road and get ready to go racing again. So we'll find out. Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing continuing to play with the idea of expanding out maybe to a 4-car operation sometime in the future. It's not imminent. They're also looking ahead at what their 2025 driver lineup might look like. They're going to put a 4th entry on the track for the August 7th race, the BitNile Grand Prix of Portland, and that driver will be, not really much of a surprise, a guy who they've tested with and they put in the car last year at the same race, Yuri Vips. Vips turns 24 today as we air live. A lot of good people having birthdays in August. We appreciate that. He, again, raced at Portland for RLL last year. This year, he'll be in the number 75 Honda-powered entry with sponsorship from Amada, A-M-A-D-A. teaming with Graham Rahal, Pietro Fittipaldi, and Christian Lundgaard with a four-pronged attack there. In 2023 Grand Prix of Portland, he qualified and finished 18th. He does have experience in Formula 2, racing that series from 2020 to 2022, won 3 races in that time. But like all those drivers, really, at that particular point in time, this is a guy who just could not break through and claim an F1 ride. So he came over here to the United States, and he's tested, and he's impressed to a certain extent. But again, you're having one of those situations where you're trying to break through and break in, and there just isn't a seat available for him at this point in time. The team in the statement said, quote, "We're pleased to be able to run Yuri in Portland for a number of reasons. One, he showed both at Portland and at Laguna Seca last year that he certainly has the pace to feature in any event that he runs in. He's done a lot of work for us in the simulator this year, which has helped us understand the hybrid system, so it's nice to reward him for his effort, hopeful that this will lead to more races with him." I mean, looking at that trio of drivers that they got there, Graham Rahal, Pietro Fittipaldi. Fittipaldi might be there in the long term. Christian Lundgaard, I think, already has himself another ride, so maybe he finds himself a ride with Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing next year. Maybe. We'll see. And then Alexander Rossi, he's going to be back in his familiar number 7 Aero McLaren racer when he returns to racing next weekend. Now, Rossi, you might remember, had to miss the Toronto Grand Prix when he broke his thumb on his right hand. It was suffered during an open practice for the race when he hit the tire barriers on the street course, wrenched the wheel from his hand before he could pull his hands away. Teo Porcher filled in for him on that race, but doctors have cleared Rossi to return when the series takes to Worldwide Tech Raceway at Gateway next weekend. Rossi's currently sitting 9th in the standings in the position of auditioning for his IndyCar future because, again, Aero McLaren has announced that they've signed the aforementioned Christian Lundgaard to take over that ride in 2025, and Alexander Rossi right now does not have a ride set for next year. I'm going to ask the resident driver this. I don't know whether you've had a broken thumb or a broken finger and then you had to go out and try and race at any point in time, but it's not like it healed in this particularly short period of time. So is it easier to race on an oval with a broken thumb that probably has a splint on it at an oval or at a road course?
That's hands down going to be an oval simply because of the fact of you having to downshift and everything with hands, upshift and downshift, and you really don't have to downshift that much on an oval. So oval is going to be better. Okay.
So that's probably one of the reasons why he was able to get back into the car so quick. So we'll have to see what else happens here as we go on to the future. Tire compound is once again it's a centerpiece. So let's talk about that. Goodyear and NASCAR will allow the teams their choice of tire compounds. You got the primary, you got the optional tire. Considering it's a short track, there's going to be wet weather tires as well. Remnants of what had been Hurricane Debbie, I think for the most part, have gone well north of this. But hey, it's summertime in the southeastern part of the United States of America. There's always a chance of rain. So here's the breakdown for you. I wish I had pictures, but I don't. Primary racing tires, the ones that we're all used to, the hard compound racing tires, or normal compound if you want to, will have the regular yellow lettering that we're familiar with. The optional softer compound racing tire is going to have red lettering. The wet weather racing tires are going to feature white Goodyear branding on the sidewalls. This is something that we've seen a couple of times. We saw this at North Wilkesboro for the All-Star race, and we saw it again, what was it, New Hampshire, I think it was?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. NASCAR, two things about this. Number one, we didn't see much of a drop-off. Okay, we used wet weathers more than we used really anything else when it came to the last time we saw this. So this really wasn't a situation. At North Wilkesboro, when they threw out the optional softer compound tire, Joey Logano ran them, I think, the entire race, and they just didn't have any fall off. But you and I talked about it at that time in the fact that we're talking about a brand new surface at North Wilkesboro, and it kind of made sense that there really wasn't a whole lot of tire wear. We're at Richmond. Richmond's an older track, and you and I have been there within the last few years, and we know that Richmond, while not exactly like Darlington, Richmond's raceway, its surface can act a little bit like sandpaper on tires as well. We should see And I say should because I don't know enough about these tires, but we should see a more significant fall off, shouldn't we?
Yes, you absolutely should see a definite fall off of the way the asphalt's braketed, like Richmond versus Wilkesboro.
Yeah, so it'll be very interesting to watch this process tomorrow evening. NASCAR also has decided something that we kind of dinged them on the last time. They decided they're going to be much more hands-off when it comes to tire choice. Again, Hurricane Debbie hit earlier this week, ran up the East Coast. There is a chance, again, of rain for tomorrow's race. How big? Probably not that big. Hurricane Debbie apparently hit the accelerator and ran up the East Coast more than what we kind of feared earlier. But NASCAR, which had been mandating whether the teams could go from racing slicks to wet weathers and back, they are now going to allow the teams to choose when or if they want to make that switch. Either way, we have found this out. Goodyear's going to dole out 6 sets of primary tires, 2 sets of the alternate, the red letter, softer compound tires, and there will be 4 sets of wet weather tires for the weekend. But as opposed to last time when they told the entire field, you have to be on racing slicks or you have to be on wet weather tires, this time, now, thankfully, the teams get to choose it for themselves.
Yes, I think this is hands down the best move because you shouldn't have to dictate when tires get changed. They should be able to change at their own pace.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are big boys and girls, and they know a little bit about racing. And we see much the same thing in Formula One. We see much the same thing in IndyCar. They haven't been telling the teams, hey, you got to go to wet weathers or you got to go to dry tires. They allow the teams to choose it for themselves. Now's the time. If we're really serious about going multiple compound tires and bringing wet weather tires to these short tracks and or road courses or street courses or whatever, give the teams the latitude to make up their own mind on it. If they go to slicks too early, we know that they'll pay a penalty for that because you'll end up slipping and sliding around and probably slamming into a wall, and that's on you. I'm of the opinion, why are we trying to save you from yourself? If you want to make a decision that could potentially end your day, that's your call.
That's right.
So, all right, let's take a break. When we come back, Legacy Motor Club, we talked about them just a minute ago. They've made a change that they're hoping is going to help them in the short term. And then I'm going to allow Matt to get on a soapbox. We talked a little bit about this on Wednesday during the Crossed Flags podcast. We're going to bring it up again here if you haven't had the opportunity to catch up on it. Plus, before he goes, we're going to make, we're going to bring some more light to the announcement that was made just yesterday with baseball.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. Fuel only. Go, go, go. We're back to the Championship Racing Network.
Matt Nicholson by phone here for this segment, and then he gets into coaching on a more serious basis this morning. I don't know. Is 20 minutes enough time for you to be able to set that team up, Matt? Just being curious. Want to make sure.
What's that now?
20 minutes going to be enough for you to get that team set up?
Oh, yeah, they're about ready.
Okay. All right. Just checking. So at the beginning, we talked about Legacy Motor Club and how with David Wilson retiring, they are the one Toyota racing team in NASCAR anyway that really needs kind of a boost. And to do so, they have announced the hire of a guy by the name of Jacob Cantor. He's going to become their director of competition. Cantor is a NASCAR veteran. He joins Legacy MC from working at GM Motorsports, where he was most recently the engineering manager for vehicle performance. But before that, worked with Rusty Wallace Racing and at Joe Gibbs Racing. So he knows a little bit about what he's doing here. This is the latest move by Legacy to kind of reform this team, which, again, has not had as much success as they were desiring in their first year under the Toyota banner. Bobby Kennedy was named GM of the race team just last month. All of this led team co-owner Jimmy Johnson to say, quote, "This has been a difficult season and performance hasn't been where we want it to be, so moves like this are necessary. We want to show up, be competitive, win races. That's the main goal." Eric Jones certainly has been able to win in the past. Not this year, obviously, but in the past he has shown the ability to do it. We're still talking Jimmy Johnson, and while he hasn't done anything since, quote-unquote, coming back from IndyCar, he's still a 7-time champion and an 83-time race winner. But, man, you look at the performance of these three cars this year, and it is just nothing. They've all but disappeared.
Yeah, I don't think disappear is the right word for it.
Well, I mean, what word would you use?
I don't know, whatever word you could say, disappear, the worst version of disappeared, but I don't know what the worst version of disappeared would be.
Yeah, I got you. They are certainly missing in action, so we'll have to wait and see whether or not this is going to help them out. All right, this is something you and I got to talking about, and we're going to show you a couple of different paint schemes here. And there's a reason why we're showing you two paint schemes for one Parker Retzlaff, and it goes back to that whole deal about inconsistency in applying the rules by NASCAR. This weekend, Parker Retzlaff finally going to get a Cup Series opportunity. He's going to run the number 66 Ford Mustang for MBM Motorsports with sponsorship from X Insurance. Thing about this is, as we have noted before, this is a Ford. Number 66 Ford Mustang. Retzlaff, in his full-time role in the Xfinity Series, drives a Chevy. Huh?
Yeah.
So why? Well, there's more to this story. It appears that Retzlaff was slated to make his Cup Series debut at Daytona, driving the other car that if you're watching on CRN Live, you see, the number 62 Chevrolet Camaro for Beard Motorsports, sponsorship by Funkaway. Somewhere down the line, and against prior precedent, NASCAR has decided that they needed to make Parker Retzlaff run in a Cup Series race before getting into a Cup Series race at Daytona. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. Several drivers, not just one or two, several drivers have made their Cup Series debut at Daytona without requiring a prior Cup Series start in order to do it, or am I wrong?
Oh, Talladega included. That's going to be, let's see here. That's going to be Harrison Burton, Riley Earps, Travis Pastrana, just to name a few.
And why? Because here's the thing. Retzlaff is very familiar with both of the NASCAR superspeedways you just mentioned. Daytona, obviously, where he's slated to race that number 62 car. You just mentioned Talladega. He's raced on those two tracks a total of 6 times, 3 each time. 1 time in trucks, the other 5 in the Xfinity Series. So again, why make him race at Richmond? Well, NASCAR's being somewhat hypocritically tight-lipped about this. Do you have any insight as to why they might be making him do this?
Yeah. No, I don't. It's confusing. It's very confusing.
And here's the thing. I have yet to come across anybody like a Bob Pockrass who has literally at the track every single opportunity he can. That's what he does for Fox Sports. I mean, he went from Bristol Motor Speedway yesterday to Richmond, where he will be today and tomorrow. Even somebody as close in line to things as Bob Pockrass is doesn't know why NASCAR is making Parker Retzlaff do this.
It's got to be, and I'm just going to call it like it is, it's got to be one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. When you've got Xfinity drivers that run quite competitive, if you ask me, hold their ground, they run great, get good solid finishes, but yet you got to make a short track start before you get a super speedway start. Makes no sense.
Yeah, I mean, even you as the show's resident driver, I'll put you into this position. You know, let's say that John and I own a team and we have decided to put Matt in the car and we're going to debut in 2025 at Daytona in the Daytona 500, and Matt's going to be the driver. Well, here's the thing. Matt has not been in an upper-level NASCAR series race at this point in time. I would understand that NASCAR would want to see you in action at a Daytona or a Talladega just to make sure that you can hold your own. But Parker Retzlaff has been there. Again, he's got 6 starts in the Xfinity and Truck Series at a super speedway. Pick Daytona or Talladega. It doesn't matter. This doesn't make sense to me. It makes 0 sense to me.
No, none whatsoever.
All right.
None.
We'll find out. I'm going to call an audible here on producer John, and we're going to go down here because we're running out of time on you. I want to go to what they were talking about yesterday when they met up at Bristol, and they wanted to start talking about bringing, of all things, a Major League Baseball game there. This is actually going to happen, too. The press conference was yesterday. Bristol Motor Speedway is going to play host to yet another sport. Again, I say host another. Because remember, not only is Bristol home of short track racing for NASCAR, but it played host to what is at this time the biggest crowd ever to watch an NCAA football game. You might remember back in 2016, they transformed the infield into a football field and hosted the Tennessee-Virginia Tech game. Brought in 156,990 people to watch. On Tuesday, starting about Tuesday, The Athletic, with reporters Jordan Bianchi and Evan Drellich, started to report about a pending announcement that Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred, along with Speedway Motorsports Incorporated CEO Marcus Smith, might be getting together to announce a 2025 regular season game that would be played at Bristol between the Atlanta Braves and the Cincinnati Reds. And if you were paying very close attention back in March when Fox had the television rights at that time and they were covering the Bristol race, Chris Myers on the pre-race show kind of hinted that it might indeed be the site of a future Major League Baseball game. But again, it was one of those comments that could be easily overlooked. In fact, we here on this show actually did overlook it, and a whole lot of other people in our position did as well. This would be the latest move, and it is the latest move by Major League Baseball to bring the game to kind of some different locations. I mean, think about it. They played regular season games at the Field of Dreams in Dyersville, Iowa in 2021 and 2022. They haven't done it the last couple of years because they've been doing construction in and around that site. Since 2017, save for the stupid COVID year of 2020, they've played a game at Williamsport, Pennsylvania while the Little League World Series was going on. Back in 2019, the Detroit Tigers, Kansas City Royals played a game at Omaha, Nebraska in conjunction with the College World Series. And then earlier this year, Major League Baseball came to our neck of the woods here in Birmingham, Alabama, played a game at Rickwood Field, the oldest ballpark in the country in regular use, hosting the San Francisco Giants and St. Louis Cardinals. So here we go. This yesterday brought about what you're about to see if you're watching on CRN Live. And you and I saw a picture of somebody that just worked up a stupid rendition of what a baseball field inside the infield at Bristol could do. This picture that is about to come up shows how I think it'll probably actually come up. And this makes a heck of a lot more sense. But you're still dealing with immovable concrete walls at Bristol Motor Speedway for a game that's going to be called the MLB Speedway Classic. The officials from MLB, SMI, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee was on hand. Members of the Reds and the Braves from their storied histories were both also on hand. Fox Sports will be televising the game. It'll be played Saturday, August the 2nd. This is the third game of a set between the Braves and the Reds. The first two games, Thursday and Friday, July 31st and August 1st, are going to be played in Cincinnati, and then they're going to travel to Bristol to this track to play game 3 of this series. I mean, if you're going to do all that work, why not just play the whole series there? But
yeah, no kidding.
You know, should the schedule play out as we have, as we're going to detail, but we haven't confirmed, there should be about 6 weeks for the workers at Bristol to turn the facility back from the baseball field configuration into a racing form for the playoff race. But again, you look at this rendition, and you saw the picture yesterday. This makes a lot more sense than, again, that really kind of idiotic rendition that we saw and we kind of previewed when we were doing Cross Flags podcast on Wednesday.
Yeah, I was pleasantly fooled and pleasantly surprised by the MLB rendition. It's actually set up quite well.
Yeah, and we were wondering whether Colossus, which is the big suspended scoreboard that hangs up right over the middle of the infield of the track, was going to be a factor. It does not look like it's going to be it. It looks like it's hanging up right about just behind where second base is and shallow center field. So, you know, yeah, you could hit a towering infield pop-up and maybe hit it, but that thing's kind of deceptively high off the ground. So I'm not so certain this is going to be a massive target. I don't think anybody's going to be playing target practice with this thing.
They're going to have to raise it up.
Maybe a little, but
have to raise it up.
Yeah, maybe a little, but not as much as we were kind of fearing, because we were thinking that they were going to move this thing way down to the end. It really kind of looks like they're kind of splitting the infield at Bristol in half, really. So it does make a lot more sense.
They are.
Yeah, this does make a lot more sense. I will be very curious as to see how this plays out. I'll be one of those people that's watching, even if just out of morbid curiosity, but I thought we were done transporting dirt onto Bristol.
Yeah, so we thought.
Apparently not. And, you know, everybody kind of wonders, and we get it. It's a short track, and I get the curiosity of it, but you'd be surprised how big, how roomy the infield actually is, even between those concrete walls. But I will say this. You get over to those areas in foul territory or, you know, dead left field. If you got a dead pull hitter, there's some people that might actually be able to actually hit a ball out there and hit the racetrack.
Yeah, that's very true.
That's a short porch out there on left field. I can tell you that. I don't know the dimensions. I'm hoping to find out more, and as soon as we get all that information, we'll be more than happy to let you know. And then one other note here before we have to let Matt go and go coach, and certainly hoping that this doesn't happen to him or any of the kids. This weekend at Richmond, Christopher Bell and the number 20 team, they are going to be without their crew chief, Adam Stevens. Stevens is recovering from surgery related to an injury that he sustained during the time off when he went on vacation with his family. Stevens' surgery on his knees, both of them, was successful. Joe Gibbs Racing officials report he will be working from the team's headquarters until he can return to the track. Calling the shots until then will be car chief Chris Sherwood. Stevens said, quote, "I hate that I won't be at the track for a few weeks, but I will be fully engaged remotely. I'm very thankful for the depth and strength of this 20 team and don't anticipate my physical absence having any effect on our performance. The surgery went well. I'll be back at the track in a few weeks. The 20 team is locked into the playoffs. They got 3 wins from earlier this year, so they're good there." Obviously, Adam Stevens can be in contact with Chris Sherwood, via however they want to do it, because there are no rules against that, and he's not been suspended. But when you have this kind of a change, Matt, what, if any, difference does this make for the driver?
Well, as streamlined of a process as Joe Gibbs Racing has, I don't think it's going to make any difference.
Okay, so you really don't see them having a hiccup at all. Okay, you don't see them having a hiccup at all. How did Adam Stevens sustain the injury? Well, as we said, he went back to Ohio to be on vacation with his family, and there were, let's just say, the younger generation. Adam Stevens is 40-ish, let's just say. I don't know the exact age of Adam Stevens, but he's 40-ish, and he and, the younger generation started playing in and around the pool. Yeah, John's starting to see where this is go. They got onto the diving board and they were doing, well, let's just say fun dives. And Adam started to watch his 15-year-old son and realize his 15-year-old son was doing stuff and feeling like he was being showed up. So 40-ish-year-old Adam Stevens decides to amp everything up. And on one of his diving board expeditions, he jumped up, he landed on the diving board, and both patella tendons in each knee popped.
Ouch.
I've said this before, I'll say it again. As I've gotten older, my brain will sit there and tell me, you used to be able to do that, you can still do it. And then my body goes, ha! No, you can't. That's what Adam Stevens' body just said.
Yeah. Oof.
Oh.
Ouch.
Yeah. Adam's not going to be diving for a while. Oof. Man, oh man. All right, so give us an idea here, Matt. You've got this game. This is kind of your preseason game, shall we say. When does your schedule actually begin?
Yeah, this is preseason game today. Our schedule doesn't begin until September the 7th. So
Okay.
next few weeks I'll be back in live. And then when the season starts, I'll be via phone for a stretch of weeks there.
Yeah.
But
all right.
we're all good.
So, all right. We'll keep you updated, and we'll find out how the coaching did when we do the racing recap next week, too. Good luck in the game. Hope it all goes well. Just you and the kids have a whole lot of fun out there. Okay, Matt?
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Appreciate you, Matt. And we'll talk to you next week here on the show. When we come back, it's probably a really, really, well, NASCAR wouldn't allow him to wear this anyway, but we're going to show you a paint scheme of Ross Chastain's that, well, they're calling it the see-through paint scheme, but the truth of the matter is it would go highly against the rules, but it is inventive. I'll give them that. I got Chase Elliott. We told you earlier this year that Hooters is gone. Who's replacing them as a primary?
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. Fuel only. Fuel only. Go, go, go. We're back to the Championship Racing Network.
We are back. Producer John in the studio. I'm Steve West. Thank you for joining us this weekend. Matt, now officially in coach's mode. Ross Chastain, the one car for Trackhouse. Going to be an interesting look this weekend. They're running what his sponsor Jockey is terming a see-through scheme. Side of the car shows the driver sitting in the seat with his helmet on, but no fire suit. Just his jockey shorts. Again, not exactly what NASCAR would allow, but again, it's just a look to help his sponsor. Chastain will be wearing all mandated safety gear. As far as his jockey shorts, I don't care. This is kind of a delayed celebration of a day you likely didn't even know was a day. Monday the 5th was National Underwear Day? Okay. This won't be the only time he'll run that look, by the way. Well, actually, it's the only time that Ross will be running that look, but you'll get to see it again when Daniel Suarez gets it on the 99 at Michigan next weekend. All right. National Underwear Day. Who knew that was a thing? You got a day for everything now.
Yep. I'm just waiting for National Fat Producer Guy Day.
That's every Saturday.
Thank you.
Chase Elliott was supposed to see his number 9 Chevrolet Camaro have Hooters on the hood as his primary sponsor for this weekend at Richmond. But again, we noted a few weeks ago that things between Hendrick Motorsports and Hooters went south because of financial problems that the restaurant chain is having. So they needed a new primary sponsor. And they got one. Coca-Cola. Now, in some ways, this makes sense. It looks like a... By the way, you can see it on CRN Live. Kind of looks like a version of the Coke Classic can. It's a one-time deal, at least for now, right? And it makes sense because you've got the Georgia-born driver, Chase Elliott. You got the Atlanta-based soft drink company and Coca-Cola. Makes a whole lot of sense, right? Until you stop and think about the fact that for 30 years, give or take, since about the time, Jeff Gordon came on board, Hendrick Motorsports has long been linked to Pepsi. That's, yeah. Think about that. This is different. But hey, you do what you got to do, right? Again, it makes a lot of sense. Atlanta-based company, Georgia-born driver. I guess they don't have that deal with PepsiCo anymore. I don't know. It just seems so weird. Knowing the history of it.
It would be
Throw me
telling,
for a loop.
since they went to Coke, that Pepsi is no longer, but who knows?
It would seem to say. Either that or they got really nice permission. Although I haven't, now that I'm thinking about it, really since Dale Jr. retired, that was the last time we saw a PepsiCo product really massively advertised on a Hendrick car, which was Diet Mountain Dew and Mountain Dew. So yeah, maybe it has ended. Things that you don't hear over the course of time, right? Spire Motorsports has reached into Front Row Motorsports once again and plucked out another person. This time, Travis Peterson. He's been signed to become the crew chief of the number 71 next year. That actually reunites the two who are crew chief and driver of the number 34 Ford for Front Row Motorsports this year. Peterson became McDowell's crew chief in 2023. Since then, they've gotten 3 pole positions, a win on the Indy Road Course last year, along with 4 top 5 and 14 top 10 finishes, and counting because they're going to fill out the rest of the year in the car. So the signing of Peterson, the earlier signing of Rodney Childers from the soon-to-be-gone Stuart Haas Racing, this is an interesting trio of crew chiefs for Spire. Their trio of crew chiefs for 2025, keeping, again, the driver crew chief combo in the 77 car of Luke Lambert, who's calling the shots for Rookie of the Year candidate Carson Hocevar, then Rodney Childers, then Travis Peterson. I gotta say, Spire really does look like they're actually going out and doing some things that are making them a legitimate player, which we've been wondering where they have been. Because, again, we go back to their beginnings, their very humble beginnings, when they just had a number 77 car. And they couldn't figure out who the driver was going to be on that 77 car. And we were curious as to how serious or when, if they were ever going to get serious about being in the Cup Series. Now they're serious about it. And it just seems to add more weight to the idea that when Andretti Global, I keep wanting to go back to their old name, that when Andretti Global comes into NASCAR, which they have said that is certainly on their radar, getting into Formula One's their main priority, but they are looking very seriously about getting into NASCAR in the very near future. When Andretti does, I honestly believe it'll be in some way, shape, or form connected with Spire Motorsports, because this, to me, just smacks all about them wanting to get more serious at the urging of Andretti. It really does. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. It's called being human. But in this case, there's just way too many connections for me to think that there's not going to be Andretti teaming with Spire in some way. Another signing, this one was a lot more expected. We go back to Trackhouse Racing. They announced a contract extension with one Daniel Suarez. They've ensured that he'll be in the 99 Chevrolet in 2025. Freeway Insurance re-upped as one of his primary sponsors as well. And there's a reason why the picture is as it is on CRN Live on YouTube. It's because Freeway's re-up with their sponsorship means that they will be on the hood for 1/3 of all the points races next year, which will include the Daytona 500. They're also going to be on the hood on the All-Star race. So Freeway has made a major investment. But from what we can tell, this is only a 1-year extension. It does not go beyond 2025, and I find that interesting. Are they going to go with him on a year-to-year basis? Or how serious are they about keeping him in that car? Time will tell. Cowlick Racing is teamed with the Ohio-based company called Strive. They're going to put the number 13 on the track when the Cup Series comes to Talladega in October. AJ Allmendinger will be behind the wheel. Strive is a company co-founded by former GOP presidential hopeful Vivek Ramaswamy, touting itself as a financial services company that their words, not necessarily mine, that is unapologetically capitalistic. Okay. They believe basically that what you work for, you earn, and you should be able to keep as much of it as possible. Plus, they also want to help their clients innovate when it comes to how they are saving their money as well. In addition to the Talladega race, the company will be an associate sponsor on the number 31 for Daniel Hemrick, through the remainder of the 2024 season. Strive CEO Matt Cole said of this partnership, quote, "We are absolutely thrilled to partner with Cowlick Racing for the remainder of the 2024 NASCAR season. Strive's commitment to be pro-American, and it aligns perfectly with what NASCAR fans believe in and could be looking for, managing their hard-earned savings. We look forward to seeing the Strive car on the track later this year." You can actually kind of help decide what the car is going to look like if you go online to cowlickracing.com/strive. They've got a couple of paint schemes up there that you can choose from. It'll be interesting to see how this goes on the track. Knowing Talladega like I do, this will be a popular paint scheme. We're still waiting on the official 2025 Cup Series schedule. You might remember Matt and I went over one earlier this year that purported to be an early leak. Yeah, right. They put both Mexico City and Montreal on there and eliminated a Darlington race? No. We poked so many holes in it, we drove Mack trucks through it, multiple of them. Well, here we go again. This time it's Jordan Bianchi of The Athletic. He's positing how a 2025 Cup Series playoff schedule would look. This was first. I'll let you know this came out first. So we'll take a look at that to begin with. And there's stuff in here that could be easily believable. Round one begins, Darlington Raceway, August 31st. September 1st is Labor Day. So, yes, this is Labor Day weekend. August 31st, Darlington Raceway. From there, August 7th, you go to Worldwide Tech Raceway at Gateway. Marks the first playoff race for that track as they move into the playoffs for the first time ever. And then Bristol comes back into the playoffs. They will race on September the 13th. Round number 2 would take us back to New Hampshire. We'll get back to what's traded in and traded out in a minute. September the 21st, they would be up there. Pretty time to be up in New England. Right about that point in time, you should really start to see the leaves changing. So it'd be a pretty time to be up there. From New Hampshire to Kansas on September the 28th, and they would wrap the round of 12, or round 2, pick your choose, at the Charlotte Roval on October the 5th. Have you noticed what's missing yet? NASCAR said that they're willing to change things up. Put a road course at the end of a round would be breaking some new ground. Round 3, according to this report, this is the round of 8, would consist of Las Vegas, October 12th, Talladega, October 19th. That would move our track back from its traditional spot in the middle of round 2, or the round of 12, to the middle of round 3, the round of 8, and get us closer to, once again, celebrating Halloween at Talladega. Could we bring back Talladega? Be kind of cool. We had a good time. Talladega.
Yes, we can.
That was a lot of fun.
Yes, we should.
And then after Talladega, we would go from the biggest oval on the schedule back to the smallest, Martinsville, October the 26th. That's pretty traditional, wrapping up the round of 8. And then, of course, you get the season finale, the championship weekend, which would be at Phoenix on November the 2nd. Now, this, if it holds, and again, this isn't the official one. This is just what we're hearing as being the leaked probability of the schedule when it comes out. This would be year number 5 for Phoenix Raceway to be the championship host. And they keep talking about maybe we need to move this race from this place to that place and take it to a couple of different places. Well, NASCAR has already said we want to kind of be somewhat similar to the NFL in the fact that we want, if we're going to move it around, we want to keep this at warm weather tracks. Tracks that we can fairly well guarantee are going to have pretty good weather. Phoenix, you can guarantee it pretty well. Homestead, Miami, they hosted it for what, 20 years, give or take? You can pretty much guarantee that's going to happen. Would they be willing to take Daytona and put it in there and begin the season and end the season at Daytona? Probably not. I think they're more than willing to keep it. We start off the season at the Daytona 500 and we'll wrap up the regular season at Daytona. So I think that's probably going to stay. Could it head back to Atlanta? Yeah, maybe. We saw some really good racing there earlier on this year. So it's possible. Plus, they're in the playoffs again this year. But they're out. If this schedule holds, they're out of it next year. But we already knew that because we started talking about the races that we knew of when we get to the new TV deal. And we already said Atlanta was going to be part of that Amazon and Warner Brothers TNT deal, right? So it's not really a surprise. Texas, maybe. Las Vegas, certainly a possibility. If NASCAR ever slams the accelerator on the construction project at Auto Club Speedway, which, by the way, they're already saying that the potential design for the 2-mile track to become a short track has changed yet again. God only knows whether this thing will ever get done. But if they're really serious about being back in Southern California, they could put a championship race at Auto Club. I'm still going to call it Auto Club. If they ever get that project done. Notice I skipped over that little track. I say little. That we play host to twice a year at Talladega. I'm just throwing it out there. We're in the southeastern part of the country. You're talking about late October, early November. Weather's still going to be decent in this particular part of the country at that point in time. While you might not be willing to begin the season and end the season at Daytona, would you be willing to begin the season at Daytona and end it at Talladega? You want to talk about a party atmosphere? Championship weekend at Talladega. Whew. Is this legitimate? Again, have no idea. This is just, at this point in time, another leak. But it does come from Jordan Bianchi. Jordan Bianchi can hit on things, and Jordan Bianchi can massively miss on things as well. So we'll see. We are seeing another link, though, that does seem to back up Bianchi's report, noting the same playoff tracks in the same order. If you're watching on CRN Live on YouTube, you'll be able to see it, and you'll see where the round of 16, round of 12, round of 8, and the championship weekend are. And again, it does match up with what I just said. So it does seem to give some legitimacy there. This idea goes back to that idea that the Clash is going to be moved to Bowman Gray Stadium before we would go to Daytona and then head to Atlanta. I don't really have a big problem with going to Bowman Gray Stadium, but it is early February in North Carolina. Weather could be a factor. Just noting it. Bowman Gray, Daytona, Atlanta, then Dakota, which moves them up on the schedule here, but apparently somebody looked at a map and realized, hey, this makes sense. We'll go Atlanta, we'll go Texas, then we'll go Phoenix, then we'll go Las Vegas before you come all the way back to Homestead, Miami. Again, they're out of the playoffs. they're in it this year, but they'd be out in favor of New Hampshire and Worldwide Tech Raceway at Gateway. And again, we talked about how New Hampshire and Atlanta, basically, they swapped dates here from this year to next year. Homestead Miami and Worldwide Tech Raceway trade off kind of as well. Homestead Miami out of the playoffs and Worldwide Tech Raceway at Gateway back in. After Homestead Miami, then you got Spring Martinsville. In April, the slate says Darlington, Bristol. Then you get a weekend off for Easter, and then you get Talladega the final weekend of the month of April. That also does kind of seem to make some sense when it comes to what we saw earlier this year out of the IndyCar schedule, which has Barber Motorsports Park the first weekend in the month of May. And I know that the state of Alabama would love to keep those two races, Talladega and Barber, back-to-back weekends, so this would make sense as well. So there's some things here that do seem to lend some legitimacy to this. May, for Cup Series, has Texas, Kansas, the All-Star race back in North Wilkesboro, and then Charlotte for the Coca-Cola 600. Then look at June. Cup Series at Nashville, then Mexico City. Now think about this for a moment. Nashville, Mexico City, from there to Michigan. What made sense earlier on as a map going Atlanta, Texas, Phoenix, and Las Vegas, now all of a sudden makes a lot less sense when we're going Nashville, Mexico City, Michigan. I'll get back to that. I know you've got a thought. Or 12.
Boot to the head.
Somebody buy somebody a globe. Then you would go from Michigan to Pocono before wrapping up the month in Atlanta. Again, thank God they got lights, and because it's June in Atlanta. July put us back on the streets of Chicago. This would be year number 3 for that. Then Sonoma, Chicago, Sonoma to Dover. West Coast to East Coast. All right. Indianapolis for the Brickyard 400. How sure am I that that is the Brickyard 400? Well, number one, they state it's oval on that schedule, but just last week we told you that NASCAR and PPG Paints signed a multi-year deal for title sponsorship of the Brickyard 400, the PPG Paints Brickyard 400, or the Brickyard 400 presented by PPG. That's a multi-year deal. So yes, we're guaranteed to be back on the rectangle next year. August, we would return to Iowa, then go to Watkins Glen, Richmond, and Daytona, August the 23rd, which would, again, wrap up the regular season. Then we get back into the playoffs, as I noted. Again, is this the actual schedule? I don't know. This does seem a lot more legitimate than what we saw earlier this year from the thing that we ripped so many holes into. It was stupid. The biggest hole that we've got here, and this is something that I heard, and I know that we're running out of time, but the biggest hole that we've got here is this Mexico City situation. Nashville, Mexico City, Michigan, that's a boatload of traveling, number one. Number two, nothing is finalized between NASCAR and Mexico City. What we know is this: NASCAR sincerely wants a regular season points race run outside the borders of the United States. Mexico City and Montreal are both in running there. And word is that talks are still ongoing, not only with Mexico City, but with Montreal about doing this.
If I may, let me interject here. Think about the route that we're taking with this schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Now, swap Montreal for Mexico City.
Yeah.
Does it make a lot more sense?
It would, yes. Geographically, it makes a heck of a lot easier to go from Montreal to Michigan than from Mexico City to Michigan.
That's number one.
Yes.
Number two, when is this?
June.
Mexico City in June is worse than Alabama in June.
Mm-hmm. Or Atlanta in June.
Ugh.
Which we are going to Atlanta in June. Like I said, thank God they've got lights at that track.
Why don't we go to Montreal where it's a little bit cooler?
Uh-huh. The only thing that I find interesting about this is this would basically put NASCAR within a couple of weeks of the Formula One race, the Canadian Grand Prix. Now, this doesn't involve streets. This is a dedicated dedicated race course up in Montreal, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. But at the same time, you are still asking for two major racing series to be there, not on the same weekend. but in weekends that are, in close proximity. It might disrupt some things. But here's the thing. Montreal is big enough, and they've got the infrastructure enough. I've seen maps. No, I've not been there, but I've seen maps. They've got the infrastructure. They can handle this. That time of the year, I'm with you, man. That time of the year, Mexico City in June?
Do it now.
Dang, dude. Mexico City in June. Toasty. We'll see. Again, don't know exactly when NASCAR is planning on putting out the official 2025 schedule. As soon as they put it out, we'll find out how legitimate what we just threw out to you is. Did you enjoy the NASCAR series Full Speed? NASCAR wants a season 2, but there's potential hiccups. We'll talk about that when we come back and kick off hour number 2 here on CRN.
Don't touch that dial. The Championship Racing Network will be right back. Four tires and 2 cans of fuel, and we're back to more racing action on the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back in hour number 2 with myself and producer John in studio. Matt not in studio. It's because,
he's having too much fun on the field.
Yeah, the kids have kicked off probably by now. He's got a rec league football team that he's coaching, 5, 6, 7-year-olds, I think is what he said earlier on.
Yes, if I remember correctly.
So, yeah, I would imagine they probably kicked off by now. And this is going to be something of a regular thing for him this year. So there will be mornings where there might be some mornings where it's just me for the vast majority of the show.
Das is true, yeah.
But, hey, we'll deal with it, right? Earlier this year, and I watched it. I liked it. NASCAR Full Speed on Netflix. If you liked it too, you're probably going to be happy to know that NASCAR is planning on a second season. Planning. Once you get past the planning stage, things become a lot less certain. Okay? NASCAR Holdings has agreed to that second season with Netflix, but we've got that charter agreement that's still up in the air. So the series isn't top of mind for NASCAR officials. And on top of that, some teams have said that lacking a charter deal, they might not be willing to participate in the filming of the documentary, which we were detailing this earlier this year. The whole full speed dropped just before the 2024 season began. And what we saw was an uptick in viewership for the first half of this year. And a lot of people are crediting full speed for that. Just like they're crediting F1 Drive to Survive with an increase in popularity here in the United States. So now all of a sudden, this charter deal that NASCAR keeps throwing something out and the teams keep looking at and effectively laughing at and throwing it back in their faces has become a much bigger deal. NASCAR footed the entire $5 million production bill for year number one, concentrated on the 2023 Cup Series playoffs, adding some lifestyle aspects of the drivers as well. NASCAR President Steve Phelps noted earlier this year that a second season was likely. He hasn't backed off that, made the announcement of a second season official just a few weeks ago. But again, problems behind the scenes. And again, the charter agreement being the biggest hurdle to overcome. There are problems that NASCAR might not want to have to be what could be the main focus of year number two. And I don't care whether or not NASCAR's footing the bill for you. The production team should not try and sugarcoat this. Okay, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I'm technically a NASCAR employee. What I do for Talladega Superspeedway 2 times a year as the main track PA announcer, hired by Talladega, in other words, I am an employee of NASCAR. But on this show, I talk NASCAR, along with Formula One and Indycar and the NHRA and so on. I'm not beholden to NASCAR in this case. Just because I'm an employee doesn't mean I'm not going to look at something and go, hey, that was great. Or if I think it was wrong, hey, that was wrong. Because that's what you're supposed to do. And that, I hope, is what this production team will do if this is still a problem when filming is supposed to begin. I hope they play this thing on both sides of the aisle, because let's face it, life is not all wine and roses. We can put the rose-colored glasses on if we want to and think that it is, but it's not. If we're still having this problem, it needs to come out, and it needs to come out fully. Do we need a whole lot of expletives? No. Would it be nice to get the playoff contenders, whoever it is that they concentrate on, to get their honest opinion of it? Sure. Denny Hamlin, we already know this because he's got that podcast that we all know of. He's not going to hold back. None of the drivers should. This is a charter deal where NASCAR is trying to, they're trying to get as favorable terms as they can possibly get for themselves. But at some point in time, you're going to have to realize the teams are not accepting that, and you're going to have to figure something out. And again, if this goes on into the playoffs, which we've only got 4 more races before the playoffs begin, it seems more and more likely that it's going to happen than not. And we'll see who it is that participates and who doesn't. If you're a fan of Hendrick Motorsports, you got plenty of reasons to be fans. Let's face it, they win a lot. They're also, in case you hadn't had your head in the sand, celebrating year number 40 as an organization, and you can now kind of be a small part of it because they got a new book set to come out in October as part of that celebration. It is entitled Hendrick Motorsports 40 Years. I know, it's an inventive title. The book is going to go through the highlights of the team's time in the Cup Series, going from that first win at Martinsville by Jeff Bodine that saved the operation. That story's been well told, all the way through the involvement of the team with the film Days of Thunder, the rise and dominance of Jeff Gordon, the rise and dominance of Jimmy Johnson, becoming the first Cup Series team to claim 300 wins, even detailing their involvement with the Garage 56 Le Mans program with NASCAR, so on and so forth. 200-page book written by racing journalist Ben White includes a foreword from Jeff Gordon and then an afterword penned by Rick Hendrick himself. Book is set to be available for purchase for yourself or maybe, a Christmas present for that big racing fan in the family Tentative release date somewhere around October 9th. Should be a pretty good book if you are a racing fan of any kind. We noted here on the show last week that there was an online vote that NASCAR.com had up, driving fans to the site during the Olympic break, try to determine what the most memorable moment of the past 10 years of the playoffs have been. Why 10 years? Well, think about this. 2014 was the first year of those elimination rounds, round of 16, round of 12, round of 8, right? We also said last week what we felt likely would win, and it did. The final pairing came down to the 2015 battle at Martinsville between Matt Kenseth and Joey Logano. You probably remember that. If you don't, look it up. Let's just say there was a whole lot of bent sheet metal and angered people. It was between that and the Hail Melon, that bonsai run where Ross Chastain put his car up against the wall, floored the gas, and was able to claim a spot in the championship round as a result. A move that, by the way, NASCAR is now officially banned. Final tally, Hail Melon wasn't even close, 68 to 32% of the vote. See ya. One more note on this. I found this just interesting and almost to the point of absurdity. But hey, if you got the money, which Pitbull does, knock yourself out. Being part owner of a NASCAR team, Pitbull, not enough. The noted rap artist, co-owner of Trackhouse Racing and NASCAR, has now signed a deal with Florida International University for the naming rights to their football stadium. What had simply been known before as FIU Stadium now becomes Pitbull Stadium under the deal, which was approved by the school's Board of Trustees last week. In the deal, Pitbull's going to pay the school $1.2 million a year for the next 5 years. He will also help work up a new school anthem for the university. As part of the deal, he also must post about the school about once a month on average, 12 times a year, and is required to appear at on-campus athletic events at least once a year through the 5-year contract. In the contract, Pitbull also gets use of the stadium for 10 days each year, and the vodka company that he also owns, what does he not do? Will become the preferred brand sold at the stadium, plus there are other perks like reserved suites for all football games. Hey, if I'm going to pay you $1.2 million a year, yeah, you better dang well give me a suite, and it better be catered.
Skybox.
Congratulations, Pitbull. Pitbull Stadium at Florida International. Okay, go for it. We talked about the Bristol thing, and I just let's go ahead and show the pictures here, John. So there's Bristol in race form, back when we filled the place. And then you're going to go from that to the baseball field. Okay.
Head back again.
Somebody asked me online, why do this? I can tell you two reasons. Number one, when we broke this a little while ago, it's just part of this continuation of kind of bringing baseball around to different places that we haven't been before. The Field of Dreams field in Iowa, go to Williamsport, Pennsylvania, let the little leaguers watch the big leaguers play in a game, take it to the College World Series in Omaha, Nebraska, where there are a whole lot of hopefuls to get into the major leagues, but very few of them will ever get past the minors. So they get a chance to actually see and interact with Major League Baseball players as well. They brought it here to Birmingham, Alabama, to go to Rickwood Field, oldest continuously in use ballpark in the entire country. This is just a kind of continuation of that. And let's face it, you've got Atlanta and Cincinnati. We worked this out during the podcast for Cross Flags on Wednesday. They're both about, give or take, 5 to 6 hours. So it's kind of midway between Cincinnati and Atlanta. The other closest teams are like the Baltimore Orioles and the Washington Nationals. It's not like you're getting Major League Baseball in Bristol, and you got to drive a pretty good ways to go see it if you want to go see it. So this gives them a chance to get some baseball in their background. That's why. Plus, they want to try and break an attendance record. The current Major League Baseball attendance record for any game happens to be a spring training game. As they were getting ready to break spring training, the Boston Red Sox and LA Dodgers back in 2008 went and played a game in the old Mausoleum, the LA Mausoleum, LA Coliseum. And they crammed in 115,600 people to watch a baseball game.
It was something like that.
Yeah. And remember, this is the LA Dodgers. This is their hometown. And if anything, Los Angeles is a Dodgers town. It's not an Angels town. Sorry, LA Angels of Anaheim. And it's taken on the Boston Red Sox, two teams that very rarely ever met up against each other on the field to play. And the Red Sox were just coming off of 2 World Series wins in 4 years, and they were defending World Series champions. So there was a big turnout for that particular game. Like I said, 115,000. Can they get more for an Atlanta-Cincinnati game?
I don't see it. I just don't.
Time will tell. We'll find out next year, right in early August. To the Xfinity Series, Haas Factory is where we're going to start off. And for all those reports, and if you're seeing them, because I've seen them, for all those reports out there that claim that Haley Deegan is going to be racing for the Haas Factory Xfinity Series operation next year, I'm going to say this. She might, but nothing, and I repeat, nothing has been announced as official. Keep that in mind. As for what we do know about the Haas Factory team, the driver who is set to move back up to the Cup Series next year, defending Xfinity Series champion Cole Custer, who is in the playoffs again for this year to try to defend that title. He and his wife celebrated the birth of their first child during the Olympic break. Cole and Carrie Custer named their son Callahan Brian Custer. I would really like to find out the origin of the name Callahan. It's got to be a family thing. Sharing their first picture of him last Sunday, Cole posted on his Twix account, quote, Callahan Brian Custer, very thankful to welcome a healthy baby boy. And my wife, Carrie, was amazing through the whole process. It has been a great Olympic break. I want to talk about perfect timing for that kid. He timed his birth during the Olympic break. Way to go. Junior Motorsports setting their 2025 driver lineup by naming 18-year-old Connor Zilic to the 88 car. This year, they're using that as a star car, utilizing a number of drivers, including Dale Earnhardt Jr. himself. Zilic signed to Trackhouse Racing as a development driver, but they have seconded him to Junior Motorsports to get him time behind the wheel, a fellow Chevrolet team. Team owner Justin Marks said that the move had been planned. Zilic just turned 18 on July the 2nd and is now, by age, eligible to race in the Xfinity Series. He did debut in the Truck Series in March back at COTA, set a new Truck Series record, by the way, new track record for that series in qualifying, and finished 4th in his Craftsman Truck Series debut at COTA. Look at a map of COTA, one of the longest road courses that NASCAR will race on. Road America's out there, don't get me wrong. 20 turns, very technical, very difficult course, and he qualified on the pole by setting a new track record and finished 4th. Not bad for a kid who had yet to turn 18. He's also got class wins already in the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona, 12 Hours of Sebring, and he's got 4 ARCA Menard Series wins to his credit. This kid's good. While he will be full-time for Junior Motorsports in the 88 next year, he's going to get a jump on it. He's going to get at least 4 starts the remainder of this year with the team. They plan to put him in the car at Watkins Glen, Kansas, Homestead, Miami, and in the season finale in Phoenix. Watch out for this kid. He's on a trajectory real quick. One note out of the Craftsman Truck Series to bring to you here. Nice Motorsports prepared to get back to racing this weekend at Richmond. New crew chief, Wally Rogers. Wally's a veteran crew chief. He's been named the new full-time crew chief of the 41 truck. Rogers was already in the building. He was the crew chief of the part-time entry, the number 44. He just trades places, basically, with Tom Ackerman. Ackerman slides from the 41 to the 44. What this does really is it allows Tom Ackerman, who is also Nice's competition director, he'll be able to concentrate more on that on a full-time basis. And Wally Rogers comes in and becomes the full-time crew chief on the 41. I think it's actually a quite wise move, because if you're splitting your attention between competition director and being a crew chief, it's hard to do both jobs. Can it be done? Yes. Can you get burned out? In a hurry. Good move on the part of Nice. When we come back, National Hot Rod Association news. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on at Indianapolis for the U.S. Nationals.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network.
The NASCAR Cup Series.
2 tires only. And back out to the track for more action on the Championship Racing Network.
Welcome back into the show with Steve West, producer John, Matt. Looking forward to hearing the results of the game next week when we get back onto the show when he returns. Meantime, when the National Hot Rod Association, the NHRA, returns to their home base, the majority of the teams in the Mission Foods Drag Racing Series, and for them, Indianapolis, they're going to have a new title sponsor for the event. Now, for a number of years, the U.S. Nationals was actually the Chevrolet U.S. Nationals. Guess what? It's now the Toyota U.S. Nationals. Yep. This year marks the 70th running of the event, and it is the event that marks the end of the NHRA's regular season. It will lock those who will be ending up competing for the 2024 titles in the countdown to the championship. It's the latest collaborative effort between Toyota and the NHRA. And remember, we were talking about this whole situation with David Wilson and his pending retirement here towards the end of the year. This is just him becoming that much more involved in expanding out the name of Toyota into racing. This is just the latest effort. Toyota became the official car of the NHRA back in 2014. In addition to offering factory support and partnership to drivers like Antron Brown in Top Fuel, Ron Capps, Doug Kalita, Sean Langdon, J.R. Todd, Billy and Steve Torrance, Justin Ashley, Alexis DeJoria, and others. Since coming into NHRA competition not quite 2 decades ago, Toyota-backed teams have claimed more than 200 event wins, and a dozen of those have come in this season so far. We ain't done yet. Time will see how this all plays out. And also, marking their 3rd year in a row to hold the postseason awards ceremony there, NHRA officials announced they've come to terms with the Pachanga Resort Casino in Southern California to play host to the honors Monday, November the 18th. Monday, November the 18th, by the way, is the day after they actually race the finals of the season, the Mission Foods Drag Racing Series, the In-N-Out Burgers finals in Pomona, California. If you want to go, I hope you know people. It is an invitation-only black tie affair. So you got a tux?
I got a black tie.
You realize when I say black tie affair, that does mean tux.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, just saying. Invitation-only black tie affair. It will fully celebrate the winners of Top Fuel, Funny Car, Pro Stock Car, and Pro Stock Motorcycle, in addition to highlighting the Rookie of the Year and handing out the award winner for Lifetime Achievement Award. They'll also denote the Crew of the Year in each of those 4 divisions. The members of the lesser division, like the Lucas Oil Drag Racing Series, they'll officially be honored earlier that afternoon, but they will be able to be in attendance as well, which means seating is at a premium.
It'd be worth running some tails.
It'd be a lot of fun to go to something like that. But
absolutely.
We're not in quite yet enough with the NHRA to do that.
Yet.
Yes. I like to put those words out there. Quite yet. To Formula One here, Williams, you want to talk about turning the page. They've all but turned the page looking ahead to 2025. We're in the middle of their August break, really the beginnings of it. Not everything has stopped at Williams headquarters. A couple of things have happened here over the last week or so. The team has stated that they're planning on bringing in some upgrades for the remainder of the 2024 year for racers Alex Albon and Logan Sargent. But then that's it. All the other efforts are now going to be shifted to the 2025 cars when Alex Albon is set to be joined by Carlos Sainz. So far this year, Williams has taken a major step backwards. They've only scored 4 points so far this year. So, truth be told, if it weren't for the hapless Sauber, Williams would be basement dwellers. Team principal James Voles said that 3 things are on the radar for the remainder of the year. They're going to do a little bit of aero work to make the car a little bit more slippery, and they got some suspension work that they want to do. But as far as development of the 2024 racer, which again has scored a grand total of 4 championship points, done. They're not going to do anything else with this car. The biggest thing Voles wants to work on for the remainder of 24 deals with weight. The car has been heavier than the team initially planned. Voles says that's been a major problem. He said, quote, "What I can tell you is that there are substantive numbers that should add up to us being back in a position of fighting for points," talking about next year. It's achieved through a number of things. Aerodynamic updates. You're going to see a suspension update. You're going to see weight coming off the car. So it's fundamentally 3 core routes wherever we're doing this. And then noted that Williams isn't the only team battling a bit of a weight problem. Said, quote, in the world of Formula One, they're big steps, but my reticence is that you've now watched RB, who've had, VCARB, as we call them, who've had an update to take it off. Mercedes had an update, and they took some weight off. You don't normally see that, but the teams have confidence in what they're doing. It did seem to work for Mercedes. For VCARB, results are mixed. Because we've seen sometimes when they've gone out there and they perform very, very well and they can get both cars inside the top 10. And then there are other weeks when they just look like they tripped over something and fell flat on their face and bloodied their nose. So I can't guarantee that this is going to be a success throughout the remainder of the year for Williams, who, again, wants to try and score some points and get some momentum leading into 2025 when they think that they're going to be able to bring an entirely new car.
Yeah, they're too inconsistent for any kind of hope for any of that.
Well, and then you add this. Again, we showed you the picture. They're going to be pairing up Alex Albon with Carlos Sainz next year. But again, that's next year. You got to run out the string here because I doubt seriously Ferrari is going to make any trades. I think, to start to make the trades, Mercedes, first things first, would have to go ahead and let Lewis Hamilton go early to allow him to go to Ferrari, to allow Carlos Sainz to go to Williams. None of that's going to happen. And what you have now is you've got Alex Albon, who knows he's on a long-term deal, but you've got lame duck Logan Sargent, who now knows, I don't have a ride for next year. And the truth of the matter is, with all due respect to the American-born driver, the first American-born driver in, a dozen years or a decade or so in Formula One, he probably won't have a ride in Formula One next year because he's done nothing in that Williams car to prove that he is worthy of having a ride next year. Could he drop back down to Formula 2? Sure. Might he come to the United States? Maybe try to get into Indycar? Maybe. Those seats are filling up quick too. But the worst thing right now is that Logan Sargent knows he's a lame duck.
So what incentive does he have to put it all on the line, as it were? Very little, if you ask me.
Williams is not backing him, so that's it certainly hurt on his confidence. The only thing that he's got going for him here is he has a chance for the remainder of this year to prove why he deserves to have a seat somewhere next year. This is your opportunity. This is your resume builder, Logan Sargent. You have the chance. Do you have the car? Doesn't appear it. But this is your opportunity. If there's anything that's going to put a burr under your butt and make you perform, this should be it. Will it happen? I have my doubts. I hate to say it. I have my doubts because, again, I don't have anything to base upon what he has done in the past that would tell me he's going to be fighting for points on a regular basis the remainder of this year.
Is it the driver or is it the car or is it a combination of the two?
Ain't that the question?
We'll find out next season.
Yeah, we'll definitely find out next year. But I honestly believe that it is. I think it's a big combination of the two, and I think that Logan Sargent is a little bit in over his head. So if I'm going to bias it, I would probably say 60-40 driver being the problem, maybe 65-35-ish, somewhere in that area, because I think Logan is a little bit in over his head. But the car is not good. Alex Albon's a talented driver. We saw that last year with his performance on the track last year. I mean, he was scoring points seemingly almost every week. Scored a lot of points for Williams last year. He was constantly out there. Was it for podium finishes? No. But was he constantly getting inside the top 10? Yeah, on a pretty regular basis. But notice I said Alex Albon. I didn't mention Logan Sargent, did I?
Maybe that's why he has a ride next year. Just saying.
Yeah, maybe that's why Alex Albon does, and Logan Sargent is about to be out. We'll see. And then again, and we saw this to extreme extent from Haas F1 a few years ago, where they basically punted an entire season and said, yeah, we're going to be working on next year's car. And it seems to now be working a little bit more in their favor in the fact that they're starting to get a handle on the car. It is interesting to see, some of the people that have kind of gone away from Haas F1 and some of the people that have stepped up. But at the same time, yeah, they're really making some moves over there at Haas F1. Williams has good backing from Doralton Capital. They seem very serious about this, and they're willing to put the money where their mouth is and go out and hire proper people to be able to go in and put them in the proper place. But at the same time, Adrian Newey still looks like he's going to go to Williams. At the same time, you still got to put the performance out there on the track. Right now, we're not seeing it. Time will tell. As far as the team, again, that seems to be pushing 2024 to the back burner in favor of looking ahead to 2025, Vols said this, quote, "Our car in the wind tunnel is not the 2024 car. It's been the 2025 car for quite a few months. The reason why we're doing this is not because I believe in 2025, but I want to get the 2026 car in the tunnel as soon as possible, but still have a sensible 2025 year." Remember, 2026 is when we get the new engine regulations. Quote, "Everything we're doing is basically forward borrowing against getting everything as quickly as possible to 2026. With the additional resources, we now have team members focused on 24, 25, 26, and a little bit on 27 as well at this time. Spreading ourselves a little too thin? That's a change for Williams, by the way. We were more used to working maybe 1 year in advance or even on the current year. And as you can imagine, when you do that within the organization, it takes time to adapt. Nothing I've told you here is special sauce. Mercedes does it, Red Bull does it. But for Williams, this is a large departure. But here's the thing. While Williams has been a successful championship team, those days are long in the rearview mirror. For Red Bull and Mercedes, it's working, because they are the dominant teams over the past 15, 16 years. So yeah, maybe taking a page out of their playbook is the right thing to do, but you're trying to turn the Titanic. It's not a quick process. Not at all. We'll find out whether or not this works for them. Red Bull's parent company, Red Bull GmbH, it's some sort of European version of an LLC, I guess, slated on Thursday that they reviewed the findings of a second independent investigation into a complaint from earlier this year. The complaint, which we talked about at that time right here on CRN, was from a Red Bull F1 employee who claimed that team boss Christian Horner was overly controlling and had behaved inappropriately around her. The initial complaint was denied after the parent company did an internal investigation, which led to the employee in question then appealing said ruling. In response, the parent company brought in not just one, but two different independent companies to look into the complaint. And both of them concurred with Red Bull's internal probe. The woman who was suspended by the organization after the initial complaint is still, according to ESPN, on suspension. She still hasn't been identified. And I don't have a problem with her not being identified. You make a complaint like this, that should be kept privately within the halls of Red Bull. But yeah, she's still on suspension, as she has been since then. And I would imagine they'll figure out a reason to fire her for cause if this continues. So we talked scheduling. We even mentioned the fact that NASCAR's schedule, should they go according to what we saw on the schedule, not to Mexico City, but put that slot at Montreal, it would butt up pretty close to the Formula One race at Montreal. Well, the 2025 schedule came out earlier this year, but there's more to scheduling than just putting out next year's schedule. There's a lot of countries that are showing interest. We'll talk about it next.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network. to the Championship Racing Network.
Hey, welcome back in. Final segment. Wow. Just constantly amazed at how quickly the show goes sometimes. There was a reason why that this show was named at one point in time the fastest hour in radio.
Faster than Mr. Sargent.
Smack. Somewhere Logan Sargent just woke up straight out of bed and went, what the heck, man? The 2005 schedule for Formula One came out earlier this year. Season not resting on their laurels. They're looking ahead and trying to figure out what's going to happen because, races come and races go. German Grand Prix. I don't know what it is. Came across a video on YouTube within the last week and a half. You get into rabbit holes on YouTube and you start looking up things and you keep going and you go from this video. It's like, oh, that's going to be interesting. And I did one racing video and I came across one that talked about the German Grand Prix specifically at Hockenheimring.
And then the rooster crowed the next morning.
Yeah, really. And really fascinating deal on that particular course. Very, very cool course, by the way. And how effectively, since Formula One went away, the track has gone away. I mean, it was built right in the middle of forest, and the forest is taking it back over. I mean, nobody's keeping this race course up, and that's a shame because, again, it was a really nice place. We haven't raced in Germany in several years. So, again, races come, races go. And there are countries out there that are kind of getting in line now because Formula One has said, yeah, we're at 24 races. We really don't see us expanding out to any more races in a year. And that's a lot to do when you're traveling all around the world. I get it. But officials from the African country of Rwanda want to be part of this as well. And they're just the latest country expressing an interest. And, of course, Formula One and several of the drivers have expressed an interest in going back to that continent, which they have been on in the past, but it's been a couple of decades, actually. The thing about expressing interest is that there are kind of stages. You just say you want to host a race is one thing. John and I want to host a race. Okay? That's expressing an interest. Where are you going to go from there? How prepared are you to actually do it? Those are other questions that come later on down the line. Reports claim Rwanda might be the most prepared of any country on the continent of Africa to actually play host to the series. Formula One CEO Stefano Domenicali told motorsport.com this week, quote, they are serious. They have presented a good plan, and actually we have a meeting with them at the end of September, and it will be on a permanent track. Is there a permanent track in Rwanda, or are they going to build one? Also, he noted that members of the Rwandan Development Board were in attendance at the Monaco Grand Prix and met with officials of the FIA, which is, of course, Formula One's governing body. It ain't cheap to build a racetrack, folks. I don't know whether you've looked into maybe trying to do it, and I don't care whether you're talking about a little itty-bitty quarter-mile bull ring oval or you're talking about, 3-mile long, give or take, road course. You need land, and you need to be able to put all of the stuff on it. And on top of that, you got to have grade 1 approval from the FIA.
And that's hard to get.
That's not the cheapest thing in the world to do. In fact, there's only 2 places in the United States of America that are permanent that have grade 1 status. COTA and Indianapolis. And I don't see them going back to the Indianapolis road course anytime soon. But those are the only 2. Watkins Glen, Sonoma, they're all grade 2. Okay, these are places that
Think about that for a moment.
Yeah, these are places that IndyCar and NASCAR race on annually. And they're grade 2. Barber Motorsports Park. Just a step down, grade 2. We hear that there are plans in place that they could upgrade to grade 1, and it wouldn't take that much.
That'd be nice.
It wouldn't take that much because, again, Barber has done things right. And they've got all the infrastructure in place. But they're not. It's not the easiest thing in the world because you're going to build this thing from the ground up. Yeah, you can put all the infrastructure in place, but you're going to spend money to do it. Does Rwanda have it? They seem to think that they do. Good luck to them. We'll see what happens. Then there's Liberty Media. Liberty Media is the commercial rights holders for Formula One. We talked about this earlier this year with this whole Andretti Global soap opera thing that still is going on, right? Liberty Media confirmed to their stockholders and their investors that they are now officially the subject of a U.S. Department of Justice investigation. Specifically, as promised earlier this year, it's an antitrust investigation in relation to the rejection of the bid from Andretti Global to join the series. Liberty Media officials reported that they, quote, have received notification from the Department of Justice Antitrust Division that an investigation has been opened with respect to Formula One's conduct concerning the application by Andretti Formula Racing to enter the FIA Formula One World Championship. Liberty Media CEO and President Greg Maffei said during the annual quarterly earnings call earlier this week, quote, we intend to fully let me get this quote right. We intend to fully cooperate with that investigation, including any related request for information. We believe that our determination, or Formula One's determination, was in compliance with all applicable U.S. antitrust laws, and we've detailed the rationale for this decision vis-a-vis Andretti in prior statements. We are certainly not against the idea that any expansion is wrong. There is a methodology for expansion that requires approval of the FIA and F1, and both groups have to meet and find the criteria has been met. And we're certainly open to new entrants making applications and potentially being approved if those requirements are met.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Did not Andretti Global meet and or exceed those expectations?
Yeah, to the point where the FIA approved their application. The only application approved out of about 5 or 6 total that were submitted, the only one approved came from Andretti Global. And then the teams came in. We'll get back to that. This investigation, by the way, from the Department of Justice, something of a bipartisan effort. It was led by Utah Republican Senator Mike Lee and Minnesota Democrat Senator Amy Klobuchar, along with 4 other senators who each sent a letter, or they all co-signed on a letter, I should say, sent to the Department of Justice requesting that the investigation be opened. Formula One and Liberty Media justified their initial refusal to allow Andretti a team, said that they did not believe that Andretti could be competitive in as short a time frame as next year, which Andretti claimed that they could join as soon as 2025, and with a longer-term plan to join the series along with Cadillac, not only as a partner, but as a power unit provider. You might not have been here, John, on that particular weekend, but I know for a fact that Matt and I, when we heard that they didn't believe that Andretti could be competitive in a short time frame. So, what do you care if they come in and you beat them like the redheaded stepchild?
Look at Williams. How long have they been around? How competitive are they?
But again, let's not even worry about the bottom dwellers of Sauber and Andretti and Sauber and Williams and Haas F1 and whoever's sitting on the bottom of the charts there. What do you care if a team comes in, they did all the prerequisite stuff. The Formula One people, the FIA approved your application. You've got everything. You've put the cars out on the track. You've got the drivers in there. What do you care if you're Red Bull, if you're Aston Martin, if you're Haas F1, if you're Williams, if you're any one of the 10 teams currently out there on the track? What do you care if you are whipping the tail off of fill-in-the-blank new team every single week? What do you care? You don't. Because here's the thing. If they come in and they're competitive immediately, we've already seen this. Go back to 2016 when Haas F1 stepped into Formula One. And they scored points, not just in the first race they were ever in, but the first 2 races they were ever in. They scored championship points in the first 2 races they ever competed in. What happened? Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, Renault, now Alpine, all started raising holy heck, saying something was being done. They were cheating. That needed to be investigated. How can they come in and they score points on the first one? So you're going to complain if they are competitive at the beginning, and now you're going to complain that they're not? Sorry, you can't have your cake and eat it too, boys and girls.
You can try.
So what's the deal? You want them to be competitive at the beginning? I got news for you. I know Michael Andretti well enough to know he's not going to mess around with a back marker. So when Andretti comes in with Cadillac, and I honestly still think it's going to happen, they're there to play and they're there to win. They're not just playing around with it. They're there to play seriously and they're there to win. So do yourselves a favor, Formula One. Understand that if you come in and you beat them around like a red-headed stepchild for a little while, enjoy it. Because that table's going to turn. In addition, the other teams expressed the short-sighted concern about having to split the overall revenue by another share instead of 10 by 11 shares, not thinking, of course, that in the end, having the team join might actually, increase Formula One's presence within the United States of America. You know, the largest sports market on the planet.
Yeah, that doesn't matter.
Meaning
they're taking money out of my pocket. No,
meaning an increase in overall revenue in the long term. Stop looking right here. Look out here. It's kind of like what I tell kids every time that I see this. And I don't get the chance to say it as much because I don't have kids myself. But I see this in a lot of people, and a lot of younger people who are just coming into the world of driving. They do what they call hood driving, which is they're not really looking much beyond the hood of their own car. There's a whole lot of glass out there, you might have noticed, in a whole lot of vehicles. And you can look through it and look around those other cars and see what's coming up so that you're much better prepared for what's coming up, say, 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 yards, quarter mile, half mile down the road maybe. And then that way you're not slamming on the brakes when all of a sudden the traffic comes to a halt. You've been much more prepared. This is hood driving on the part of Formula One. They're looking right here, right up against their face. They're not looking down the road. You bring Andretti Global in. And again, I've said this before. I'm on the record of saying this. You can go back into previous CRNs and Cross Flags podcasts, and you will hear me say almost exactly these words. This is short-sighted on the part of Formula One. Because with all due respect to Haas F1, which, yes, is an American-based team, it's really the only connection. Andretti Global is going to come in. They've promised to put in the American-owned team at least one American-born driver, and they're going to be based here in the United States of America. They'll have a couple of other bases, yes, but they'll be based here in the United States of America. And they're bringing in Cadillac, an American car company. If you want to bring the attention of the American fan to Formula One, boom, you got all four bases covered, to borrow the baseball phrase. That raises the profile of Formula One. Well, what happens when you raise the profile of anything in a big sports market? Revenues go up. We'll keep an eye on this. We'll let you know. And one more note. Speaking of Andretti Global, Formula E. Andretti Global wants to return to the top of the heap in that series, and they feel that a change of drivers is in order to make that happen. So, Norman Nato's out after 1 year with the team. Nato left Nissan after season number 9 to join Andretti for this past season, the 10th, but his best finish came in China, 3rd, and it was his one and only podium finish of the year, and he ended up being 15th in the final standings. In comparison, his fellow Andretti driver in Formula E, Jake Dennis, finished 7th in the final points. Scored 75 more championship points on the season than Norman Nato did. Ouch. The team, however, only announced that Nato was out. They promised to name their new driver lineup in the next few days, so we likely will have that information on next week's show. But yeah, 1 year and you're gone. Oof. Serious over there. They didn't like the underperforming that they did. We'll find out. And Andretti Global is an interesting situation. I mean, it really is. I'm fascinated by them. And I'm finding out more and more information as I go through. And in just how serious the whole Andretti family is. When it comes to NASCAR, who was the person that said, yeah, we're really, really interested in going out to NASCAR? Was it Michael? No. It was actually Mario. And some of the officials within Andretti Global said, yeah, we're really seriously looking about getting into NASCAR in the very near future. They admitted, yes, Formula One is their priority. They want to get everything set in and showing what they've done. I mean, they've opened up their headquarters in England. They're building their new race shop in just outside of, I should say, Indianapolis, Indiana. which will have a Formula One wing to it. It'll be the last one actually filled out and finished because, obviously they've got active race teams right now in both IMSA, for example, and Formula E and in Indycar. But yeah, there is the area where the Formula One team will be based out of in that shop just outside of Indianapolis. They have built and they have staffed with 75 to 85 people their British location. They don't even have a Formula One team. And they state that they're already building on a car that could race as early as 2026. That's how serious Andretti is about getting into Formula One. And you don't spend as much money as they are spending without being serious about being competitive. That's why I say, be careful what you wish for, Formula One. You want them to be competitive right off the bat, you might just get it. And then they turn around and they talk about going to NASCAR, which means an additional outlay of serious capital investment. You think they're just going to come into NASCAR and play around and be happy to be sitting in the back of the pack? I like what I'm seeing out of Andretti Global. Watch out for them. They're going to be massive players. We'll be back, I think all three of us, next weekend. Hope you join us then, and hope you join us for Cross Flags on Wednesday. Thank you very much for tuning in.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.